Hey YouTube people, not too long ago, in fact it was my very last video, I was showing you how to use different power modes with the Surface Laptop Studio here. I've got mine in hand. But there's a few more questions and a few interesting things I found out about this device that I want to share with you today. And one of them is, well, they're all related to performance and power consumption. The first thing I'm going to look at is I found yet another secret power mode on the Surface Laptop Studio that you guys might be impressed by. So stay tuned for that. I'm also going to take a look and see if using a 127 watt power brick actually increases performance. And we'll take a look at all of this right after a word from our sponsor. Hey guys, I wanted to talk to you for a minute about the sponsor for this video. Now you guys know that I don't lightly just throw sponsors into my videos. I won't choose to work with just anybody. I only work with people and companies who I believe actually have a quality product and it's something that's actually useful, especially to my subscribers. And that's why I'm happy to introduce my sponsor for this video, Aura. And Aura is a company that helps prevent identity theft and does so many things. So for example, in 2020, 49 million Americans were victims of identity theft, and it ended up costing them a combined $56 billion. And this isn't just happening to grandpa and grandma who are falling for phishing scams or people who don't know how to use passwords correctly. It's not just happening to those people. In fact, 37 billion records got hacked in 2020 alone from major social media sites, national grocery store chains, cryptocurrency exchanges, pharmacies, phone, and internet providers. Anywhere that your data is on the web is a potential place where bad actors can get your information. That means that unless you want to give up the internet completely, preventing your personal information from leaking could be completely out of your control. And that's why I partnered with Aura, like I said, the sponsor of this video. Their app uses AI and machine learning to help protect your identity online. You tell Aura your email address, your account numbers, phone numbers you want monitored, and their algorithms will scour the dark web, data brokers, public records, and they'll alert you to any criminal activity in those areas quickly. Now, the Aura app also features a VPN that can encrypt your browsing history and allows you to stay anonymous online. Like I say, Aura is a complete suite of products. They also have an antivirus software that will block malware and viruses before they infect your devices. So I think a lot of the value here is not only the monitoring, but also VPN, virus. It's a complete solution for you. Now, someone becomes a victim of identity fraud every 14 seconds. You don't want to be the next one. Let Aura do the hard work of protecting your identity. Now, I signed up for Aura and I plugged my own information into here, and it was incredible to see all the places where some of my credentials were out there on the dark web. In fact, there were 84 instances of that, and now I know, hey, these are the credentials that I don't ever want to use again. And in general, as my viewer, you should know, you never want to reuse passwords across different platforms anyways. So I have, like I said, partnered with them to provide you guys with 2 weeks free for an Aura membership, and I'm including the link on the screen and in the description below. And you can go in there and check and see if your personally identifiable information has been leaked to the dark web. Start your free trial at the link below. And with that, thanks to Aura. Thank you guys for clicking through that. Hopefully it's something useful that you will enjoy using and knowing that you are protected online. So with that, let's get to our video. Okay, so let's take a look at some things here. First of all, I did some testing, and this red line is the laptop in normal laptop configuration, like this, in its high power mode. So that's the question is how many watts can this thing pull when it's just in its standard laptop mode. So if we look right here, we're going to look at the first one here. This is total system power. So you can see it actually does peak above 100 watts briefly. And it definitely can do that. I loaded this with Furmark and a CPU burner program just to pull as much as I could from the computer to see how it throttles. So keep in mind this is a synthetic benchmark. So what you're going to see is it's just a constant heavy load where you might have a spiky load going on all the time that would make these graphs look completely different. But we want to do this in the most controlled way possible. But let's go ahead and look at what this looks like. So we're zoomed in here. We've got over 100 watts for a brief amount of time, and then it kind of slows to a little above 90, so like 93, 94 watts, and stays there for about 4 minutes, and then drops down even lower to 90 watts. And a lot of that is happening, well, we'll get into more. And then it kind of, as things heat up, it goes lower and lower. And if you're in a very hot room, not much ventilation, this will go down quite a bit. I've seen it go as low as maybe 70 watts. Obviously, this test was just, open air, pretty well ventilated just to see what it would do normally. And then you can see it kind of like evened out. I think the fans probably ramped up a little bit more, and then it kind of settles in at 90-ish watts. And let's go ahead and look at what was actually happening to make the total system power. Total system power is GPU, CPU, all the subsystems combined. So if we look at just the CPU package power, it peaked at about 50 watts and then quickly came down within, the first 30 seconds. Down to 30 watts, and then it dropped down to a 25 watt. And if we look at the PL1, you can see how it was actually doing this. The PL1, it said, okay, you're good up to here, and then it said, no, you need 30 watts, then you need 25. And then at some point after that initial period, it starts relying on those Surface firmware modifiers that's based on the system chassis and temp and all sorts of things. And so then you can see it gets very dynamic after those first couple of minutes up and down. So let's change that back to the CPU clocks. Not clocks, package power. So you can see the clocks reflect almost the exact same thing. It's going above 4 gigahertz and then down to 3.5 and then just over 3 gigahertz and kind of bumps around. And again, this is in normal laptop mode. But here's the deal. I'll get right into it. If you want better performance, more consistent performance on your Surface Laptop Studio, if you put it in temp mode, suddenly we're going to see the graphs of what happens, but you'll get a better, more consistent performance out of this device when it is set up like this. How would you ever know this if Microsoft does not tell us? But you can literally see like the Furmark, running along at about 90 frames a second. You pop it into this mode, suddenly it's going 110, and you're just like, really? That's 5-10% performance increase that you're seeing when it is in tent mode. And I get it. We'll look at the graphs, but when it's in this mode, they assume, it's on a table. They're not holding it. I don't know what their assumptions are, but they basically know you're not typing on the machine. So at that point, they say, let's give them some more juice because they're in tent mode. And you can literally see it activate and deactivate when the display hits the magnets on the front of this. You can literally watch the performance change while you're doing that. So if you want a better performance in your games, use an external keyboard apparently, and put it in temp mode, and you'll get more consistent performance. So what does that look like on our graph? So here's the total system power. Let me turn this on. So first, total system power, you can see it starts off pretty similarly, but this, when it bumps down to 95, it stays at that 95 level for a long time. It doesn't seem to care as much. It eventually bumps down to the same level after about 10 minutes. But you can see that if you keep this cool, at this point I put a fan on it, and you can see it comes back up. And it comes back up at a higher level than the normal laptop does. And I don't have all the graphs to show that. This is just from my personal experience. I probably should have put that in. But let's look at the CPU package power. You can see what's going on here. So it gives it 50 watts, roughly the same, and then bumps down to 30, but it stays at that 30 watts continuously without dropping down when it's in temp mode. And that obviously is reflected in the core clocks. You can see that green line, this is temp mode. Red is normal, green is temp mode. It goes across. Look at the GPU power. It's pretty much the same. These are the watts pulled on the GPU, and it's pretty similar. Not a big difference there. The one thing that they did good with the Surface Laptop Studio is they do prioritize the GPU a little more than the CPU, which is a good thing because you can throw a lot of power to CPU and not get that much more performance, where GPU tasks, which are really parallel, like the watts count for more on the GPU than they do on the CPU, up to a point. But yeah, not a huge difference in temp mode on the GPU, but the CPU does sustain its power quite a bit longer. So there you go. If you want much better consistent clocks on your Surface Laptop Studio, go ahead and put it in temp mode. You're going to be able to pull 95 watts of performance instead of 8990 for a longer period of time. And if you were to cool it with a fan when it's in this mode, you'll get, somewhat of an uplift. But if it's in temp mode, you'll get even greater an uplift when you're doing it in temp mode. And I think they basically just say, hey, I think they're not as sensitive about clamping down the performance when the chassis gets a little bit hotter when it's in temp mode, because they know your hands aren't on the keyboard. That's the only thing I can think that their engineers were thinking. But yeah, temp mode, better performance. So let's take a look now at the power brick. So this is kind of a nuanced thing. Can the 127 watt power brick get you better performance? If you're talking about GPU and CPU performance, the answer is no. It does not respond any differently to the 127 watt adapter. However, if you consider performance being, the fact that your battery's going to charge while you're playing a game, sure. that's better performance. The 127 watt power brick is a better power brick for you. You will notice a difference because if you're using the computer, your battery's going to charge quicker. Because if you're running anything, even fairly basic, even Windows updates run in the background, your computer is going to be pulling at least 60 to 70 watts, which only leaves about 30 for charging, and it needs more than that. If it was off and charging, you might see 50 watts from the wall, but when your computer is using more than 50 watts and the battery wants more than 50 watts, it's going to err on the side of saying, hey, battery, you can just wait until I'm done with my CPU cycles. So you'll charge quicker in practical matters with the 127 watt if you're using the computer while you are charging. So there's that. But let's look at the actual data because that probably speaks more to it. So first of all, this blue line is now running these performance tests, synthetic loads, while using a 127 watt charger. And at first glance, you might say, whoa, wait a second here. That blue line is on top of everything else. And you're right, it is. However, we got to dig a little deeper. First of all, let's look at the CPU package power. You can see that blue line for the 127 watt charger is actually the exact same between tent mode and tent mode with the 127 watt charger. So it's actually not giving you more performance. I think this total system power draw either varies a little bit, or it's allowing the subsystems a little more power. Maybe I had the brightness set up higher. I don't know if that reflects in it. But the CPU and GPU clocks were not any different. Where before, between tent mode and normal, yes, you can see a difference in the CPU clocks and performance. But between the 127 watt and the standard 102 watt power brick, the clocks are not any different. And we can look at that. There's the core clock. So we've got the green and the blue. They're literally just mirroring each other. So same performance. The system power draw was a little higher on the 127 watt, but it's probably because it knew it's probably the charging circuit. I don't know what it is, but there's just, it's not a huge difference. Like you're literally 1 or 2 watt difference here between the blue line and the green line. So it is what it is. GPU clocks, again, exactly all the same between these modes because it kind of gets prioritized. And GPU clock, same thing. Temperatures, I guess I didn't talk about this earlier, but for whatever reason, and I'm not quite sure what it is, I don't know if the fan hysteris is different when you're in tent mode versus standard mode, but the red line, remember, is normal laptop mode. And the GPU tends to kind of spike in normal mode and then kind of goes down. Where in tent mode, it kind of increases in temperature and then just kind of evens out. And you can see the tent mode in green is higher than the red by the end of this. So again, tent mode is, temperature is not necessarily an indicator of performance, but it is an indicator of things that are happening inside the GPU. But anyways, the fan curves must be different when you have it in tent mode versus not, because again, green and blue are in the tent mode and the red is the standard mode, which tends to spike and then come back down and try to be lower than it was before. Anyways, so those are the data sets behind this analysis. So again, I'll say it just one more time. For ultimate performance on your laptop studio, drop it in tent mode. I've even seen weird things when you're in this mode, and for some reason the performance just like it gets caught on something. It like just won't. I think it's the Surface firmware, frankly. But if you move it into tent mode, suddenly it kind of resets your PL1 values, or I don't know what it's doing, but it resets things and your performance comes back. And then you move back to here and then your performance is back to normal as well. So if you ever feel like, man, this is running slow, you can literally pop it down, go into high power mode, put it back in here, and you're kind of cruising again. Weird firmware. Hopefully that's just resolved at some point in a firmware. But yeah, tent mode is your friend for performance. And regarding the charger, do you need to go out and buy a 127 watt power adapter? If you're doing that for CPU GPU performance, don't do it because it's worthless. That you're not going to get any better benchmark score, frame rates by getting the 127 watt adapter. What you will get is a computer that you can use while it's still charging at a decent rate. If your Surface Laptop Studio is turned off and you plug it in, it's going to charge pretty quick. But if you're using it while you plug it in, it might go kind of slow if you're doing something intensive. So that's up to you. You can find these you find them on eBay for like $25 sometimes. I found this one. I think I got this for like $35 plus shipping on eBay for a 127 watt. It's an original. It's not a fake one. I would recommend an original, just because who knows. So anyways, if you like this content, go ahead and subscribe. If you test this out on your own Surface Laptop Studio and have some input, go ahead and drop some comments, and we'll see you next time as we look at more different devices. Hopefully, some more interesting devices come out. There's been just a whole bunch of cool things that have been out this year, but I think we're kind of into a slow period now. Like, I don't know. Oh, so there's the X16, which you guys know I like the ROG Flow X13 device. Did a couple of videos on that and the Z13. So there now is an X16 coming out that also supports the XG Mobile. So I don't know if I'll be able to get one in to take a look at it, but if I can, I will. But other than that, it's kind of quiet on the fronts. What I have been noticing using the Surface Laptop Studio, I'll just do this as an aside. I'm already like way over on time, but hey, if you've made it this far, you'll want to hear this. So there's the X13, which has the new Ryzen 6000 series CPU in it, and also the 3050 Ti in it, similar to the Laptop Studio, which also has a 3050 Ti. The difference is the X13 has a 35 watt GPU, and this one has a 50 watt GPU. The difference is that the Asus X13 has that 6000 series AMD chip, and it has a MUX switch. So even though this is a 50 watt GPU and the X13 is a 35 watt GPU, the X13 still beats the Surface Laptop Studio, which is disappointing when you have a 50 watt GPU head start, but yet that I don't know what to attribute that to. But the X13 on Shadow of the Tomb Raider gets about 77 frames per second, 1080p. And the Surface Laptop Studio, I can only get 72. So X13, 77, Surface Laptop Studio, 72. So pretty decent lead, especially considering the fact that the X13 weighs almost a full pound less. So that's kind of frustrating to me because I like the Surface Laptop Studio form factor a lot. It's what I'm using as my daily driver at this point. Even though I do love the X13 a lot, it doesn't have as good a stylus support as I like. And it also, the screen is not quite as nice as the screen on the Surface Laptop Studio. If the X13 had a 1600 tall display, I might still stick with it if I could find, I don't know, but you get 120 hertz refresh rate on this thing with a higher resolution than 1080p display. So there's enough creature comforts on the Laptop Studio that it's what I'm using. But for performance, that X13 is just better in terms of performance. And I'd love to see if that X13 got, well, what I really want is the Laptop Studio to have a refresh. If they came out with I don't know what's going to come out in the future, but RTX like 4060 or a 4050 Ti, whatever it's going to be, combined with, either a 12th gen Intel or maybe, a 6th gen or 6000 series Ryzen in the next iteration of the Laptop Studio, that would make me really happy, but I don't think we're going to see that for at least a year, a refresh on this device. So it is what it is, but because I feel like it's so close. We're so close to having a USB-C powered computer that is just has almost as much performance as you would possibly want. So we're getting so close to that it's exciting. And I have rambled for a long time now. So I will let you guys go. We'll see you on the next video.